Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to the webinar. It is about bumper systems, and on the agenda I'll be going through introduction, nomenclature such as component names and their class of division, and why and how the material selection decisions are made for those components, and a brief intro on GD&T and how all the components come together as one bumper system. So moving on to bumper systems, bumpers are also known as fascias in some places, and it is a defined structure that is attached to the both front and rear of the vehicle. And the main purpose of the bumper is to absorb the shock at the time of collision and avoid injury to the passenger and damage to the vehicle. Additionally, they also provide an aesthetic look to the vehicle and help in defining the theme, like such as theme of the vehicle, such as off-road and on-road. For example, we have pickup trucks, sedan, SUV, and all. And those vehicles have certain type of requirements, and bumper system designing those bumper systems according to the requirements help in satisfying many criteria. Moreover, bumper systems are also help in defining the aerodynamic features of the car, which in turn helps in improving the efficiency, range, and performance of the vehicle. Moving on to nomenclature, bumper systems are usually divided into two assembly categories, that are front bumper assembly and the rear bumper assembly. And both the bumper assemblies are comprises of Class A components and B side components. Moving forward with Class A components. Class A components are the components that provides a cover to the vehicle structure. In Class A, in bumper system, Class A components are usually comprises of upper fascia, lower fascia, grill, which is upper grill and lower grill, and chrome plated parts. Chrome plated parts are the ornamental parts, which has a sole purpose to provide an aesthetic look. They helps in defining the features of the car. Additionally, we also have RPA sensors, sensors. They do not fall into any of the categories like Class A or B side, but it is important to have a note of them because they are attached on the bumper system depending upon the car features. We have certain sensors like RPA sensors, kick sensor, radar, lidar, and cameras. So RPA sensors are used to assist the driver while parking the vehicle. Kick sensors used to open the trunk by sensing the leg motion, and radar and lidar sensors helps the defining the car's parameters and support the driver by assisting him through features such as adaptive cruise control, lane assist systems, backup camera, night vision, and all. Moreover, in now advanced vehicles like electric vehicles, these systems get too much complicated, and sometimes they are attached on the bumper systems or on the frame of the vehicle. So here's a typical example of the front bumper systems. Over the image, the upper portion, this portion is the upper fascia, and the lower part is the lower fascia. And the grill is divided into two parts, which is the upper grill, which you can see over here, and the lower grill, which is over here. And the ornamental parts, as I spoke earlier, are these chrome rings of this Jeep Renegade, and the chrome surrounded on the bottom light systems of the vehicles. This ornamental parts are solely used for the aesthetic purposes. They do not serve any engineering purpose. They are just for look. Further along, moving to the B-side component. B-side components find their places on the back side of the vehicle, typically back side of the Class A, and they comprise of brackets, shock absorbers, and heat shield. For example, brackets I have discussed earlier about the sensors. So these brackets helps the sensors to get attached over the bumper system. For example, consider an RPA sensor which is strategically located around the bumpers from left to right, and the brackets helps in attaching those sensors around the bumper. So moving on, another B-side components which are like side brackets. We have some brackets called side brackets, fender brackets, and tailgate brackets. So in the image of these assembly systems, you can see this is the tailgate bracket, and here are some side brackets. The main purpose of these brackets is to bridge they act as a bridging component between the fascia system and the body in white of the car, which is the aluminum frame of the body. Depending upon the shape and size of the cut light, for example, in this Jeep Renegade, this cut line separates the bumper system to the vehicle exterior, which is a metal exterior. So in some cases, it's a straight cut line, or in some cases, it's an L-shaped cut line, sometimes called as an hockey stick. So depending upon the shape and size of the cut line, the shape and size of the bracket varies. And additionally, we have fog lamp brackets, which help in mounting the lighting system of the car and supporting the desired angle of projection. Likewise, in the upper in the on the image above, I am displaying the bumper assembly from the back side, where the upper pink color one is the upper fascia and the blue color one is the lower fascia. The green color one is called the leg catcher, or called the bumper stiffener, which is, and below is the real world example, like a example of it. The two legs are usually attached to the lower fascia, and the upper part of this one is attached to either to the grill or to the upper fascia. The main purpose of this is to stiffen the lower fascia, which and at the time of collision or impact, the energy is absorbed by it, and it helps in transferring to other attachment systems. Additionally, we on the right side we have the heat shield. Typically, the heat shield is attached to the rear end of the bumper systems, like the rear bumper system assembly, where in order to protect the system from the heat coming out of the muffler. Moving on to material selection, as I discussed earlier, bumpers are meant to absorb shock at the time of collision. As I discussed earlier, bumpers are meant to absorb shock at the time of collision, and the main purpose, and for this purpose, materials like plastics are appropriate for the applications. At the earliest stage of the automobile development, bumpers were usually made up of metals, which were not efficient in absorbing the shock, and for those purposes, plastic serves as the best material, since metal components are efficient in transferring the energy rather than absorbing it. So moving on to plastics. So plastic is a polymer, as we all know, and depending on when we apply certain heat and pressure to it, it can be molded into any shape and size. So typically plastics are divided into two categories: thermoset plastics and thermoplastic. Thermoplastics are the plastic material which can be molded when heat and pressure is applied. It can be molded to any shape and size, and can be reused and recycled n number of times without changing the chemical properties of the component. Whereas we have thermoset plastics, when once it is molded into a shape and size, it can't be reused or remolded without changing the chemical properties. Hence the chemical process is irreversible and can't be used for any other purpose other than it has been designed for. Moving on to materials, like how we select is based on all the bumper system components are almost made up of plastic materials, and different components have serves different purposes, and the selections of those material components are based on those purposes. Typically, the properties are divided into physical properties, aesthetic properties, and chemical properties. So in physical properties, we have strength, toughness, flexibility, tribology, and UV stability. And aesthetic properties, we have appearance, color, transparency, soft touch, and hardness. And chemical properties has working temperature, water absorption, chemical stability, and dimensional stability. For example, consider a component like an exterior component like upper fascia or lower fascia. Those components are highly exposed to sunlight, and it has to be UV stable. So the material selections is based on those in that property. When we consider another type of part, which is B-side part like brackets, those are not exposed to sunlight, but they need to be tough in order to support the whole assembly. So toughness is the more tough, and so the material which is more tough is selected based on that. Moving on to design, the initial base design starts with the studio designing, and it is divided into two categories. Like the first part is like the base design is made in studio, and on the and when it is done, it is, and then it's moved on to the engineering team where the computer aided design take place. So on the left side is the class A surfaces which is provided by the studio, and on the right side is the bumper system assembly developed using the class A. So initially studio uh, starts with a sketching model, and then the design is developed into a clay model of like around 4 is to 10 ratio, and the base is then divided into line distributed among the top executives of the company for the approval. Once the approval is done, once the approval is obtained for the vehicle design, then they actually start with the clay model. And while designing the clay model, following categories like following criteria are considered, like what terrain the vehicle has will be used in, like is it an off-road or on-road vehicle, or what class it is, like for example SUV, sedan, etc. And what are the aerodynamic feature requirements of the vehicle, and homologation requirements of the particular market, like manufacturing requirements. When furthermore, when the clay model is ready, 3D scanner is then used to generate a computer model, and from that a surface model is developed, which is called class A. So moving on to homologation. What is homologation? Homologation is defined as the process of getting the vehicle approved by regulatory bodies, and in this process, items such as engine size, power output, physical dimension, weights are considered. So here, in studio perspective, uh, vehicle physical dimensions are, they consider the vehicle physical dimensions. For example, bumper system consists of exterior projections. So exterior projections are any object or component which is protruding outside of the vehicle surface are called external projections. For example, any sort of logo or any curvature or exterior protrusion which is on over the surface, or that might come in contact with the pedestrians or cyclists, are certainly comes into the external projection category. So I have given you, I have displayed an image of a Fiat logo, which is considered as an external projection. So if I take a cross section around the horizontal cross section on F, so typically a ball analysis is made over that cross section. Depending upon the market, like country, the ball size varies, and that using the three ball analysis, the height of the projection is then determined. So for example, here I have given projection height is over 5 mm, which is the requirement for the European market. If the projection height is like around more than 5 mm, then the radius at those edges, all the edges of the external projection should be greater than 2.5 mm. So that is one of the criteria, and there are many requirements falls into homologation. This is one of the example of it. So manufacturing requirements. So car exterior consists of various components such as metal, plastics, and rubber. So all those metal has their own manufacturing metals, like sheet metals are manufactured to stamping, forming, or welding, etc. And plastic metals are manufactured using injection molding, blow molding, or rotational molding, and all. Moving on to aerodynamics, the aerodynamic features of the bumper plays an important role by directing the air into the vehicle and around the vehicle. Uh, Grills, for example, grills, both the upper and lower grills helps the air to flow inside the vehicle, which is used to either used for cooling systems or as an engine air intake, and allow the air to direct towards the brake in order to cool them. And the bumper exterior even have flow counters in order to direct the air towards sideways, which helps in increasing the performance and range of the vehicle. So once all the class A is developed based on the previous criteria we spoke about, the then the class A is provided to the engineering design team, and from there all the engineering features are added to the system. And while designing those systems, uh, following criteria are kept in mind, like what manufacturing process the part would be manufactured, and what is the assembly criteria, like how those all the parts would be assembled together, and what are the thermal requirements, like is it if it is the front, if the part is in front fascia, then there's not much heat involved, whereas if it is a rear fascia, like rear bumper system, then there will be much heat coming out of the muffler, and it will be exposed to heat. So based on those criteria, the designs are made. So starting with manufacturing process, almost all the components in the bumper systems are and and we have the following manufacturing process, like injection molding, blow molding, CNC machining, vacuum forming, polymer casting, and 3D printing, and rotational molding. Most certainly, almost all the times, most of the plastic parts are of the automotive plastic parts are manufactured using injection molding and blow molding. Moving on to injection molding is highly used to manufacture automotive components. Uh, so what is injection molding? Injection molding is a manufacturing process of plastic part by injecting molten plastic material into the mold and letting the molten material to be cooled and stabilized before it is taken out of the mold. So typically, injection mold consists of two two parts. One is the injection unit, which is this area, and the other one is the clamping unit, which is this one. So starting with injection unit typically consists of a feed hopper over here, where the all the stick pellets are dropped to it so that it could be further processed, and uh, from there the plastic material goes into the barrel, where there is a screw system which is and utilizing the heat coming out of the heating elements which is surrounded around the screw system. The plastic materials are then melted and injected into the clamping unit, whereas the clamping unit consists of mold system, which are further divided into core and cavity, and where the core, additionally, it has a moving mechanism which helps the core to move back and forth when the molten material is injected into the mold. The the core part uh, the core part moves outside, and it has certain strategically placed injection pins, so that when the material is cooled and solid enough to be taken out, those pins helps in ejection of the part. Moving on to GD&T. GD&T is defined as the systematic representations of engineering tolerance on the engineering diagram. This is mainly used because the real world parts, when they are manufactured, they are not to their nominal dimensions with respect to what we have designed in CAD. So due to this certain tolerance allowance has to be made to determine how much of the part dimensional variations could be accepted, and this variance is represented systematically on the engineering diagram. Additionally, we have GD. We have another part of GD&T deals with the fit and finish of the components, whereas the gap between those components are determined, like how much gap should be maintained between the components. A method called RSS, like root square sum method, tolerance method, is used to determine the gaps, and it also uses the properties like material properties and manufacturing tolerances into considerations while determining the gaps of it. This in terms helps the determine the best fit and finish of the system, which is important for the assembly. Moving on to the assembly, once all the parts are designed according to the specifications, and then these components are brought together and made into a single assembly. As we talked about earlier, we have bumper front bumper assembly and rear bumper assembly. Those are different kinds of assembly a vehicle can have. So in the image I have displayed an image of rear bumper assembly, which is sitting on the assembly line. So in order to bring the components all together, there are two types of attachment schemes can be used. Two types of schemes can be used. One is the attachment schemes, which is kind of a hook features used to attach components together between each other. Uh, for example, we have snaps, D-loops, darts, and we have another type which are like using fasteners, screwing the components together, sort of. So, for example, we have push pins, box nut, rivet. So, in this image, I have given you a plastic to plastic attachment scheme. So, on the left side, there's a D loop which is used to attach two components together. So, one blue color one is the upper fascia, whereas the brown color one is the lower fascia, and those two parts come together using attachment feature called D loop. And similarly, there's another type of feature called dart, which is used to attach the similar components but in a different way. The choice of the attachment varies with the location, materials of the plastic, and another ones are fasteners. As I talked earlier, it is kind of screwing the components together. So there are various fasteners like J-clip, box nut, rivet, screws, and push pins. So in this example here, I have shown the the blue one is the grill, and this green one is the leg catcher, like the bumper reinforcement, and the brown one is the another grill component, which all those three components have came together using a J clip, which I've displayed here, and they have attached together using the screw. The selections of those attachment features solely depend upon the attachment requirement, like the manufacturing requirements, and they're usually uh, they're usually selected based on engineering criteria and how much tough or rigid the attachment should be. And if the attachment has to be flexible, then the plastic to plastic attachment has will be used. Like for earlier I have as you can see in this image, if the attachment has to be strong and rigid, then so attachments like fasteners are used in some cases. From this I have finished my webinar.